Thank you all so much for joining us this afternoon for the fourth Military Family Forum. This is the first time we've done a fourth forum as part of our series, so we are very, very happy to see you all here. We're honored to have with us this afternoon the Army families who have made the ultimate sacrifice in service of our country. But we also want to provide information to all of you that love a soldier, because I think it's very important that we be prepared not only for ourselves, but to help our neighbors through these very difficult times. I hope that you will find the information valuable, and I hope you will take the time before you leave to finish the critique sheets that you have in your bags, and there are also some on the table, and tell us what we can do to make these forums better for you. Now, without further delay, I'd like to bring on our moderator, Colonel Wendy Martinson. Please give her a warm welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Sylvia, and good afternoon, everybody. Over the last 2 days, we've had some wonderful dialogue. Family Forum 1, America's Families, Our Leaders. 2, America's Family, Our Children. And America's Family, Caring for Ourselves. This afternoon, we will focus on support for surviving fallen family members of our fallen warriors. Survivors include spouses, parents, children, siblings, grandparents, and many, many others. Some survivors are also soldiers themselves. In the face of such tragic loss, survivors often face many unique challenges and hurdles, regardless of how their loved one died. And that journey is long and it is difficult. The Army is committed to providing long-term support to families of the fallen through the Survivor Outreach Services. I would now like to introduce to you the Commanding General of Family Morale Welfare Recreation Command, Major General Reuben Jones, to provide an update on Survivor Outreach Services and the way ahead. Okay.
Hello, everybody.
It takes a great deal of personal understanding and support to put a program of this magnitude into place. And today I have the great pleasure of welcoming the man behind the idea of the Survivor Outreach Services Program, our Chief of Staff of the Army, who is himself a survivor, General George Casey.
Thank you. I'm sorry the lunch ran a little over. We had the chairman of the Joint Chiefs there talking to us. It's great to see an admiral that has gone out with his wife and really tried to understand the Army. And the two of them have traveled all around the Army, really getting to know our soldiers and their families. And it's been a great help to me. Well, great to be here with you, everybody, today. And to talk a little bit about the Survivor Outreach Services Program that we started just about 2 years ago. So the program is 2 years old. And I'm really kind of interested in getting a sense from you all about how we're doing on that. The way we got started in this is, as Sheila and I traveled around the Army early in my tenure, and we started dialoguing with survivors at different installations. And a couple of things came clear to us. One was that really after 5 years at war, we were still just doing casualty assistance, that was about it, that there wasn't anything else or much else after that. And the second thing that was very striking to me was that there were a lot of folks out there, survivors, who felt that the Army was their family and they wanted to remain associated with it longer. And so we came back and started talking about it and thinking about it and to figure out how we could operationalize those two thoughts. And the result of that program was Survivor Outreach Services. Now, this is a big Army, and I've been in it for 40 years, and I know that sometimes we're a little structured in how we try to do things. And I also know that grieving is a very individual process, that you can't have a cookie-cutter solution toward. And so what we've tried to do is build a process with enough structure in it so you had a program, but with enough flexibility in it that it could be used by individuals to meet their needs. And I'll tell you, it was clear that we were never going to do this ourselves unless we brought some survivors into this. And so right from the beginning, I started a survivor panel, a group of survivors that I actually came in contact with at various times, and I asked them, would you help me out here? Would you just be on this panel and share your thoughts with me and with Sheila so that we can guide and shape this program as we go forward? Maybe I don't have to tell you this. If you haven't been through it, you don't get it. And so my panel here, my crack panel, I see some of them sitting over here, but Dana Lamerson. Dana really is the one who started this for me. Dana called me when I was a commander in Iraq, and she was concerned about her husband's funeral. Husband ran. And I said I'd look into it. I called the chief, the CG of the 101st, and he said, he'll check, ran the traps, it's all going to be fine. But then Dana and I kept in contact while I was in Iraq and after I got back. And through Dana, I started getting a sense that we weren't doing everything we need to take care of our survivors. Those of you that know Dana know that she's a very prolific emailer, sometimes bordering on spam. But she has really helped me focus on the important things. Right after Dana, I came across Donna Engerman. There's Donna over there. And one of the smartest things we did is we hired Donna. She's on the panel, but we also hired her to help us run the Survivor Outreach Services program. And then Dana introduced me to Christy Stanley, and I think Christy got left at Arlington. Sorry about that. Yeah, but Christy's husband was killed in an aviation accident back here in the States. And then Robert Stokely. And Robert, we wanted to get a parent on here, and I needed someone to control all the ladies, or at least to attempt to do that. And Robert has taken that on. And then lastly, I'm looking over here. Carolyn Malpin, are you here? I asked Carolyn recently to come on to the panel. Her son Matt was missing in Iraq for about 3 years before his remains were found. So she has a unique perspective on some things. So that's the panel, and that is the group that I look to kind of keep us straight and to keep us calibrated on going forward here. And they've been very, very helpful. I don't know if some of you heard the remarks I made yesterday, but I talked about the great things that the Army has done, but I also talked about the cost. And one of the things they said, and I'll say it again to you all, is that you need to know that your loved one's sacrifice is both recognized and appreciated and won't be forgotten. That's our commitment to you. And so with that, I'd like to really to hear from you all. Sheila, you're going to come up here. You're going to say something. You'd like to say something? This is my lovely wife, Sheila, otherwise referred to as the better three quarters.
Hi, well, it's a pleasure to be here today. I had the honor of going to the outbrief yesterday over at L'Enfant Plaza, and I have to say that the group that came up to do that work clearly worked very, very hard and came up with some really, really solid suggestions on things that would not only help them, but they're really paving the road for those who come behind them, which is so important. As I will reiterate, what George said, as I said yesterday, your loved ones will never be forgotten. Thank you to all of you for your service and your sacrifice. I know words are very difficult to find to really display how much we mean this, but do know that we do, and we do care.
Thanks. So I'd be happy to take some questions or hear comments from you about how we're doing and what direction we need to go and what we need to fix.
I have several, but I'll send it.
You send it in an email, yeah. I find out all about how the meetings at AFAP and everything, how all that went. I get my own private debriefing here. Yes, ma'am.
I'm Deborah Tanish. My husband, Sergeant Major, retired Marine Corps. David Tanish. Our son was U.S. Army Cavalry Scout, 2nd Armored Cavalry Regiment. Sergeant Patrick Tanish killed February 11th, 2004, Baghdad. I believe your name is on probably some of the documents that we have. Our journey since 2004, being part of the first 700 of those lost in Iraq, I can just tell you that our journey as a mom and dad in that first year, we had no connection with any families that had ever lost a child, let alone one in war. I will say that prior to this wonderful program of SOS, Bonnie Carroll and the Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors kept our marriage together, if not our lives, and gave us a new path to take to learn how to live in our new norm and to cope in our new norm in the loss of my husband's only child and namesake. And I can say through this journey and all the families that my husband and I have mentored across the country since 2006 as mentors for TAPS, and we've heard every story from every kind of family that I've also put into books that I've written since. But I want to commend the Army for what they have done to bring the SOS program together, and although it's in its infancy, I believe after sitting in the room for 2 days with others pounding through some of these issues that we know are only the beginning, that with the right leadership, the right compassion, the right individuals that hold the jobs within each of our SOS installations, and working hand in hand with our experts like TAPS and others that are out there for us, you have set a precedent so that families who follow us hopefully will not endure some of the many pains and shortcomings that happen on the road. And I just want to personally thank you in the name and honor of our son for what you're doing for all of our families and those that will follow us. And it's going to be a great thing as this moves forward in time. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and that certainly is our intent. And you said SOS is in its infancy. What I've found in this great 1.1 million person organization, that's also a pretty big bureaucracy, that it really takes about 2 years to get something going. Because first you have to have the idea, then once you have the idea, then you have to go out and hire the right people to implement the idea. And I've just seen it takes about 2 years to get that traction. So I think the work that you all did here over the last couple of days is really coming at the right time, and it's going to allow us to move forward much more rapidly with your suggestions than we would have been able to do a couple of years ago. Please. Hello.
The SOS program information is given in the casualty assistance training class. For those who are victims of casualty assistance, it's linked now. They know about it.
Is that a question or a comment?
It's a cost, no.
Yeah.
Thank you, those who get the casualty assistance
Yeah.
training, there are.
I mean, we do have a little silo action going on here with the casualty assistance officers being under the personnel folks and the survivor outreach services being under the installation command. And I'm counting on General Lynch and General Bostic to make sure that the work between those two are seamless. And they can't be independent agencies. There's got to be a smooth handoff over that seam, as you suggest. Please.
I'm a teacher, I could be loud. Hi, I'm Nikayla Myers-Garner. I'm coming from Hohenfels, Germany, but I'm originally from North Carolina, where my husband, Captain Mark Garner, and I grew up together. I'm sure you're very familiar with the issue I brought up last year with those of us who live in Germany and having only 90 days to transition into a new life, leaving our friends and our community and everything. So I'm just reiterating the point and hoping that you're remembering that. But also, I would like to talk about an area in which we can improve with the military. My husband, Captain Mark Garner, and I discussed everything about the possibility of him being killed. We are very lucky that we discussed that. And I believe preparedness is key for our soldiers and their family members. And Mark planned his funeral. I only implemented it in a time when I was so stressed out and just, it was hard to even think straight. And I'm lucky I had that. That was a gift Mark gave me. And I feel that we could implement a program within the military to help soldiers be better prepared, not only in initial plans as far as funerals are concerned, but in plans for the family members who are left to survive without their loved ones. I am lucky and very fortunate. I know exactly what Mark Garner wanted for me in my life. That's a gift that is so priceless, and I'm very fortunate. And we need to help our family members and our soldiers prepare for the unthinkable, because frankly, for all of us, death is inevitable. And hopefully this is information that and plans that family members can make that they will use in 60 or 70 years after a very prosperous life. However, it's good to prepare, and those preparations help with picking up the pieces. And I feel like that's a gift that we can give our soldiers and our surviving family members if we prepare them properly and give them the answers, give them the questions and things and information that they need to discuss. Because I've had so many family members come up to me and say, "Hey, I know you and Mark talked about this, but we just don't know what to talk about." So I am volunteering and traveling all over Germany to help family readiness groups, casualty assistance officer trainings, and units prepare. And this is something I feel that we can do as the Army to help support our family members.
Great.
Yeah, no, it was interesting. We had a lunch at Fort Bragg a couple of years ago, and with a number of survivors, and it was very interesting because, you know, one spouse said, "I didn't know where he wanted to be buried. I don't know if I did the right thing." And so many of those things. When George left for Iraq, I said, we need to get our wills squared away. We need to get, you know, all of those things done. And I said to him after, I said, "I never asked you if something happened where you'd like to be buried." And those are the kind of conversations, I think, that are very difficult to have. And I think oh, that's my purse ringing. Sorry. Sorry. But I think that is really, really, you know, it's an important conversations, but there's another part of all of us that's in some fashion think if we have that conversation, we're that much closer to it happening. So it's difficult, but I learned a lot that day at that lunch about. They're very persistent, huh? I learned a lot that day at that lunch about the details that are really, really important for family members to know, not only because it is a time of extreme stress, but also you want to think and know that you did the right thing and what they wanted.
That comment on preparedness is something that I get all the time from family members. And it's such a personal decision. I mean, we basically punted. We got the will done and didn't want to talk about it. My son just returned from Afghanistan, and his wife came in to me one day as I was sitting at my desk right before he left, and she squatted down and said, if something happens to Ryan, how am I going to find out? And she made me talk her through the process, which I thought spoke volumes about her strength. The necessity to plan ahead for things like funerals. My stepdad just passed away a couple of weeks ago. He was very clear about what he wanted and didn't want with his funeral, and it made it a lot easier for everybody. Now, this is another one of those things that, how do you have a structured Army program for something that's very personal? And we certainly can make the education of the soldiers available, but it's the old, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. But I think hearing stories from you all, the work that you're already doing, is probably the most helpful thing to cause family members and their soldiers to deal with these things up front. But we are taking on the training part of this. The other thing you talked about was the 90 days in quarters in Germany, and I don't know that we have resolved that yet. It's still a SOFA issue, but I was in Vicenza last week, and it came up again there. And so we got more work to do on that. But again, it's a status of forces issue that we just haven't been able to crack yet. But we'll keep swinging.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, ma'am.
My husband's unit, he was stationed out of Fort Hood. They actually, I had never seen this before. He had been deployed 2 previous times, but they actually gave legacy books, is what they called them, for the soldiers to fill out prior to deployment. And they made it a requirement for the soldiers. My husband was the company commander, and the reason why I knew they made it a requirement is because he was talking to me about how the soldiers needed to get this done. But basically what it was their wish list for if something should happen to them. And that's when we discussed things as far as where he wanted to be buried, because that was one of the questions. Funeral songs, funeral arrangements, who he wanted, and it really helped because I had never seen this book before. And so that's almost a simple way to have it done. It's just a legacy book, and you just leave a copy to your loved one before you leave. And that way it's just it's nothing that's set in stone. It was not, I could change it if I wanted, but I knew that that's what my husband would have wanted. So that's just a suggestion.
Thank you. That is a good suggestion.
I'm Shauna from Fort Bragg. Sorry. That's
There you
me.
go.
One thing that I notice a lot is we do a lot of really, really good things for spouses, and I know we're working even when it comes to parents, but I notice a lot of parents are completely unprepared and lost. They don't live the military life day to day. Some don't know anything about the military, maybe what they've looked up online. But if they haven't come from a military background, they're very lost. And I feel like they may not be followed up on as well as maybe spouses get followed up on, even though there are still holes there too. But many parents are left feeling as if they don't know where to go, what to do. The information they get is often disjointed and confusing. And maybe they go back to a community that doesn't have any military really nearby very close. And they may just get lost in the system. And there are great programs, but many of them just don't know about them.
Yep, I think that's one of the main points of discussion from last year, that we had to get more involved with the parents. I don't know, Robert, do you want to say anything about that?
Sure. In fact, the AFAP conference that we've been a part of this week, spent a good bit of time talking not only about parents, but siblings, and siblings are probably the most kicked to the curb group out there. And I think that's something that is getting focused on. And I don't think they or the parents were purposely kicked to the curb. I think it's just probably how it happened. I mean, it's just, you know, when you've got spouse and children involved in the soldier's life, that's who the main focus is on, and that's who the main focus should be on. But the parents and the siblings also need some focus, and that's being worked. And, you know, two of the groups that worked on it, they brought up issues to address needs of those survivors as well, and I think we'll see more of it in the future. I agree with what the lady from Fort Bragg said. I was one of those dads who had no clue what the Army life was about. And, you know, I mean, even a simple term like what an OP was. I kept having to ask my son, what are you talking about OP? And then he would have to explain it to me, you know. I had to learn a lot fast, and I'm still learning a lot. But, you know, hopefully the parents and the siblings coming into this process will get a chance to learn that up front. And pre-planning, like Nikayla talked about here, and the other family readiness person over here talked about, you got to have that honest conversation, especially parents with their children going to war. You know, some people dodge it because they're afraid they might jinx something, but guess what? War involves killing, and it's our guys that get killed too, and we've got to be prepared for that, because if you don't, you're really going to get swept off your feet if it happens to your family. So you got to have some honest conversations, you know. It's a lot better if you do. So we're working those issues, sir.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Megan LeClaire, and I'm also a surviving spouse. We're kind of switching gears here. My situation is slightly different than the majority of SOS survivors. My husband was deployed to Afghanistan, and he came home safe and sound, and we were very, very happy. On the morning of December 1st, 2007, the morning of my daughter's birthday, my husband took his own life in my living room. And, you know, I have to say, and I have to applaud our military with all the suicide prevention they have put in place, given this time we are coming into. The suicide rate is climbing drastically. And I do see a lot of wonderful things changing. And I'm very proud to say I've been a part of some of those things up at Fort Drum. There needs to be more done. There needs to be more available. And I'm willing to help in any way possible. I think they need to see the faces of suicide and understand that it doesn't just affect that person, it's a ripple effect. And not only did I lose my husband of 10 years, but I lost my military family and the entire unit. Because if it could happen to me, it could happen to anyone. And that is something they didn't know what to say to you. It's completely different type of grief. And I have to say, SOS, when I found SOS, it was like a guardian angel for me. And I've been volunteering with them ever since. They can't get rid of me now. But it's just been a lifesaver for me. This program has helped me figure out all my finances. I was supposed to be getting entitlements I wasn't getting. I am just so thankful for this program and happy to be a part of this. And I want to thank you for all the programs you do have in place, but let's continue to work on that, because obviously this is a growing problem, and if we can prevent it for just one, that's enough for me.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. We're all, frankly, frustrated by our inability to have stemmed the tide on suicides with all of the huge effort that we've had going on in this area. And it's something that is not just an Army problem. It's a societal problem. And there's a couple of things going on that we're going to continue, but I think have great potential payoff down the road. I think most of you know about the National Institute of Mental Health study that we have going on, a 5-year study, the largest study of its type on suicides. That's already given us some great insights. The other program, I think, will have a significant impact on the force, and while it's not a suicide prevention program in and of itself, it's designed to give soldiers, families, and civilians the strength and the resilience they need to deal with the challenges, to keep from getting in that dark place to begin with, and that's comprehensive soldier fitness. And that's a year old today. So we're moving out very strongly. And then the second program is the Army's program for health promotion, risk reduction, and suicide prevention. And that is fully resourced, and we're fully committed to going forward with that and expanding what we're doing here until we can stem the tide. We have to stem the tide.
Just to put a little bit into perspective about the parents and how disconnected sometimes they are, I had a story where a soldier had died, and he was deployed from Fort Hood, but attached to an 82nd unit in Fort Bragg. So when the mother lived somewhere in North Carolina, and I happened to be traveling, and she wanted to know from me if she had received the right stuff from her son. She wanted me to look at the packet, and she had received the box with his hat, because he was in the cavalry, some coins, and his personal effects. There was nothing in the box that explained any of it. So she was really thrilled when I was able to explain to her what the coins were, and I got another soldier to talk to her about it, and she realized, she said, this is just as important as any other medals he received. So it's really nice if we let them know, if we give them some kind of background, because they don't have it. Some of us are lucky to have that. They don't. That same spouse had told me, she said, somebody at Fort Bragg knows my son, and I'm looking for him. And she said that she had heard from somebody that they had posted on the paper, if you know this soldier, he owes you any money or anything like that, contact this person. And she was looking for him because she thought they must know him. And some of those things, I mean, they're just stuff we're used to, so we take for granted that it's there. But when you're a parent, you're just hanging on to whatever, and you see and hear these things, and you don't think the stress that's causing them. So it's really important we really let them know, even the simplest of stuff, that we don't take it for granted.
Thank you. Thank you, and I hope we capture that in the discussions from the last couple of days there, so we can act on it. Here you go.
Hi, I'm Liz Sparks. My son was PFC Cody Joe Thompson. He died by suicide 2 December 2008. He was a reserve, and my experience, unbeknownst to me until I found TAPS and SOS, was that I was supposed to have a CAO and a help. I had no one. We did the entire funeral on our own. We paid for the funeral, and my son had to sit in the funeral home for 2 weeks before I could find a place to bury him. I want to help change that. I also want to stop the suicide stigma. It's still there, General. It's still there. I talk to many troops. I train and consult on this now. I was a trauma